Welcome to the 2023-2024 Deep Dive Series, where we're going from every single team, worst to first, lowest rated to highest rated, 30th to the first team. Here at 24 is the Chicago Bulls, and they were an interesting team last year in that they beat all of the good teams and lost all the bad teams. They were the definition, the epitome of an inconsistent basketball team, led by superstar DeMar DeRozan, led by failing center Nikola Vucevic. This team struggled to find an identity, and game to game, minute to minute, team to team, beat the guys that they were supposed to, lose the guys that they were supposed to. There was just no rhyme or reason to this basketball team, but they are going to be coming in at the 24th spot because they're in a bad place right now. First of all, they haven't had Lonzo Ball, and Lonzo has been the difference between this team being an elite first place in the Eastern Conference team versus a bottom feeder. One of the 5 worst teams in, I'd want to say, the Eastern Conference. They've been a little better than the Hornets, Pistons, Magic might pass them up. They were better than the Pacers for some stretches, but the Chicago Bulls team is one of the first teams that is on the way down, but they still have their core cast players. They still have the capacity to play better than they are. I think they need a move at head coach, and they need their superstar Lonzo Ball to come back and put this team on its back, gel them together, and be the team that they were meant to be when they had that big free agent splash a couple of seasons ago. But last year they had a decent record, 40-42, finishing 9th in the Eastern Conference, and then I believe they won and then lost to the Heat in the play-in tournament, who obviously the Heat went on to the finals, but they are finishing 13 spots lower than they did in last year's power rankings, starting with the fact that Lonzo Ball is no longer on the team for at least next season. And to be honest, I don't know if Lonzo Ball is going to play basketball anymore. I'm more worried about his long-term health. I'm more worried about the fact that he might not be able to walk like a normal human again. He might not be able to stand up from a chair. And I know Stephen A. Smith has talked smack on it, and there's a video of Lonzo standing up with one leg out of a chair. Good for you, but you're like a 25-year-old kid, and I'm just worried that his body is irreparably fucked from the non-stop injuries that he's had. And the Ball brothers, they struggle with injuries. Lonzo Ball now has his documented case of injuries. I don't think he's had a single full 82-game season played under his belt. LaMelo Ball has been dealing with injuries every single year, and because the Hornets are bad, we don't really pay attention, but he has injuries. And then LiAngelo Ball hasn't had a chance to get into the league and play for a starting team for more than like 10 games at a time. But that is just a topic of Lonzo Ball that we'll discuss later. They're coming in with a 78.3 rating, just a tick ahead of the San Antonio Spurs, but they didn't have a tremendously interesting offseason. They did lose Patrick Beverley, who they traded for at the midseason mark. He was pretty good for them, gave us a little bit of that tenacious defense that the Bulls are severely lacking. They've always been a more finesse, lower rated defensive team just because DeMar DeRozan doesn't focus on defense all that much. Zach LaVine, I don't know if he can play defense all that much. Vooch certainly can't play defense all that much. And then the other guys are role players. Patrick Williams, theoretically they play defense, but they're not all world, all NBA defensive caliber players. Your defense starts with your best players, and if your 3 best players don't try, then you're not going to have a good defensive team. So Patrick Beverley is going to be lost a little bit, but his loss is going to be filled in by the bringing in of Javon Carter. Now, Javonte Green is gone, and I think Bulls fans are a little hot and a little cold on this because Javonte has been the heart and soul of this team, just a classic energy guy. But then they bring in a couple guys like Torrey Craig and recently Terry Taylor coming back, kind of filling out that Javonte Green role. Javonte dealt with an injury. I think he's going to be out for the first half of next season with that injury as well. And then Derrick Jones Jr., high flyer, inconsistent as well. Great athlete, theoretically, great defense, can shoot the corner 3 a little bit, but just another guy who's like, we can upgrade upon this. We can improve upon this. Let's go out and get a Torrey Craig. So they are bringing in Nikola Vucevic, probably the biggest move of this offseason, and another thing that Chicago Bulls fans are not really sure about. Is it better to have Vooch back on a pretty absorbable contract, 3 years, $20 million a year for $60 total million? It's not great, but it's not terrible. It's just the fact that this Bulls team isn't really looking to improve, to get better. They're saying, let's run it back. And I can understand, on the one hand, the GM says we beat a lot of good teams. We could come out of the East that does seem beatable. That does seem weak. 76ers are beatable. Celtics are beatable. The Heat are beatable. Why not us? And theoretically, if everything clicks with this team, they could be a competitive team, a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. But is Nikola Vucevic that guy? Javon Carter, they're coming in. I guess he's going to be the projected starting point guard. I actually had him as the backup and Alex Caruso as the starter. Did not realize that they projected him to be the starting point guard. Going to be interesting. Torrey Craig and Julian Phillips, their second round pick. He was like pick number 33, I want to say. Anyway, Let's go on to the starting lineup where Jevon Carter is coming in. I did not realize that he was the starter, but he's an interesting player. He's an undersized two-way point guard. He played well for the Milwaukee Bucks. He has really good defensive instincts. His problem is his compact frame. He's like 6 feet tall with a 6 feet tall wingspan. He does not have that crazy athleticism that you'd like to see from guys like even Dalen Terry on this roster, who's got really good size and versatility at that point guard position. But his three-point jumper was money last year, 42%. And he had a couple of really good seasons out there in Milwaukee. He had a rough season for Brooklyn when he was a mid-level exception. Got drafted in Memphis, played for Phoenix a couple years, not a lot there. Brooklyn, he wasn't all that great. And then went to Milwaukee, and they kind of just said, we don't need you to do too much. We need you to do what you're good at, and that's play defense on the guard position, and that's do the catch and shoot three-point shooting. And he was money for it. Now, is that role going to translate over to the Chicago Bulls team? Time will tell, because Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan love their ISO ball. They love not sharing the rock, and Billy Donovan loves not putting in an offensive system. So theoretically, is Jevon Carter going to be the guy who goes, sits in the corner, and just catch and shoots threes for them? Sure, he's capable of doing that, but the Chicago Bulls offense is best going when everything is free-flowing, when they're in the transition, and Lonzo Ball or Alex Caruso are making these great transition passes, and they're setting up their players, and Patrick Williams is doing the trail three-pointer, and Nikola Vucevic is backing you down. Jevon Carter, I don't know how well he fits into this team. He's one of those guys who can play their role pretty well, which he did for the Milwaukee Bucks last year, which is why he translated that into like a 3-year, $20 million contract. But at the same time, you ask him to do too much, and he struggles. His efficiency drops off. That three-point percentage that was money will probably revert back to his more career percentage in the 30s than it will stay in the 40s, just my opinion. His assist to turnover ratio isn't all that good. He averaged 1.0 last year. So a 2.4 to 1.0 assist to turnover. It's basically 2.5 to 1. It's not great. You want to see that closer to 3 to 1. You want to see that closer to 4 to 1, like the Tyus and Trey Jones brothers do, than a 2 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. So the question is, what sort of system does Billy Donovan insert into this team now that he's got a couple years under his belt being the head coach of the Chicago Bulls? Is it going to be more of the same, or Zach and DeMar do iso ball? Or are they going to ask Jevon Carter to be point guard and play make, which he showed that he's not really great at? So it's going to be interesting to see if, first of all, Jevon Carter is the starting point guard, then what role does he play in the starting point guard role, and how is that going to fit alongside the rest of the team? Now, he did have some really good games last year, which is why I think he started to put some things together. When Giannis and Chris and Drew were sitting out for the Milwaukee Bucks last year, he scored like 25 points in a night on pretty decent efficiency. He can light it up from three when he's feeling confident, when he's feeling good. His issue will always be playmaking and lack of size, because it's not lack of effort tenaciously on the defensive end, but when the rest of the guys aren't playing defense, like Vooch, LaVine, and DeRozan are not going to this upcoming season, does that still mean Jevon Carter's going to try to lock his man up when he realizes that Nikola Vucevic isn't there to back him up to clean up that mess like a Defensive Player of the Year candidate Brook Lopez was? Time will tell. So it's an interesting signing. I'm not sure how I feel about that, and I feel like Chicago Bulls fans are a little too positive on Jevon Carter, thinking that he's going to play like an all-star caliber player that he showed a couple of games last season, when we just haven't seen that from Jevon Carter. But we're moving on to Mr. Zach LaVine, who was really interesting to me in the fact that as soon as DeMar came over, he immediately took the backup role, even though I think he theoretically is a little bit better than DeMar DeRozan. And especially in today's modern NBA, he shoots the three and DeMar DeRozan doesn't, but he also jacks up the three, and he doesn't have that great basketball IQ that you want to see from your guys. He takes so many low percentage, low quality shots that it's got to be frustrating for Bulls fans when you see Zach LaVine taking another step back three. Last season was one of those good seasons where it was good, not great. The 2 years before, he was an all-star, averaging 27 and then 24. But last year, it was kind of more of the same, inefficient shot making. 37% from three is more of a career low for him, which is actually interesting because he's a career 38% three-point shooter. You like to see him getting closer to a career 40% three-point shooter, but his shot selection wasn't great because the playmaking wasn't great because they weren't really being set up because they were playing ISO ball. Defensively, it's just not a priority for him, and it hasn't been a priority for this team. And when you realize that Nikola Vucevic is the guy that's supposed to quote-unquote rim protect for you, you just focus more on outscoring the other team than you do on beating up the guy that you're guarding and playing hard on both sides of the court. And it's always just been an issue for the Chicago Bulls team, and it's always been an issue for Zach LaVine. But he is a shot maker. He is a killer. He is a dog. He's probably pretty close to a Devin Booker, if we're being completely honest, if he could just get a good head coach and a good selection of role players around him. He's still athletic. Going into his year 27, 28 season, Zach LaVine will score an easy, cool 30 points for you a night. He just has turnover issues. Last year he averaged what? Where are my stats? Pulling them up. I'm not killing time by just saying words. 2.5 last year, was actually down from his usual 3.4 he's been having since the 2018-2019 season. I mean, 3.4, 3.4, 3.5, 2.6, 2.5 when DeMar DeRozan came over, turnovers per game. That's unacceptable. Defensive effort. There's this fun stat on StatMuse that says Zach LaVine has had a negative box plus minus since he was drafted. -7 when he was a rookie, -3 in his sophomore year, -2 in the 2016 season, -7, -4, -3, -0.1, -0.3, and then last year he had a positive 0.23 plus minus, which is ridiculous because he's so much better than that. He has the capacity to be at the very least a number 2 option or a 6th man of the year off the bench. Now, the question for him will always be, is he closer to a Tyler Hero or is he closer to a Devin Booker? Is he closer to an MVP or a 2nd/3rd option who can score and is dynamic, but not a full, complete basketball player who's going to give you winning tendencies, who's going to squeeze the most out of every possession, who's going to make sure that you're making the right NBA play, because he's going to get his numbers. But does that translate to winning basketball? So far, it hasn't, but it did when Lonzo Ball was here. And that's the conundrum with this Bulls team from top to bottom. Moving on to Mr. DeMar DeRozan, Mr. Mid-Range himself. And there's always people that are going to be like, oh, if he doesn't shoot the 3-pointer, he's going to suck and he's not going to be a winning basketball player. And DeMar's always been in that tier, about 2 tiers below what the true superstars are. He's never been a Jokic, but he's been close to a Donovan Mitchell. He's never been a Durant, but he's been a Jaylen Brown. Now, DeMar DeRozan is the best foul baiter I have ever seen. He just throws up 47 pump fakes in the mid-range, gets your defender up in the air, jumps in your body, and then goes to the free throw line where he's going to shoot a ridiculous 80, I want to say 88%? Yeah, 87%. His free throw game is money. He's a mid-range master, as we all know. His defense, though, is pretty and it's just not an ideal number 1 for your team, but he'll make you think that he can be him for a few weeks out of the year. He'll hit a couple of game winners. He'll drop a couple of 40 pieces on you, and you'll be like, man, DeMar DeRozan is so good. I can't believe we always count him out. Look at the Joker tattoo on his arm. And then he's going to go and play negative basketball. He'll be inefficient. He'll shoot like 20% from the 3-point line. He'll turn the ball over, and you'll be like, man, why is DeMar DeRozan on my team? Let's trade him away for Kawhi Leonard. His game is very similar to Zach LaVine's. He's averaged at least 2 turnovers basically since, what am I looking at here? Since he became an all-star. 2013, 2014 turnovers, 2.2, 2.3, 2.2, 2.4, 2.2, 2.6, 2.4, 2.4, and 2.1 last season. Now, that is offset by the fact that he's a little bit more of a better facilitator and playmaker. He's kind of hovered around that 4 to 5 assist ratio. Ever since he actually got to the Spurs, he's been closer to 6 than he is to 4 in his yearly assists. I just honestly wish that he could play next to a KD. I wish he could play next to a Giannis and see what he brings to a championship team as a true number 2. Be a Chris Middleton, so one of the guys who can't shoot. I mean, I feel like he's more than good enough to fill that role. I feel like he's better than a Chris Middleton. His issue is just on the effort and on the defensive end because, man, he just doesn't try on defense. And it is understandable given his workload, especially when this team was playing without a point guard. And DeMar DeRozan was basically the de facto point guard alongside Zach LaVine. They had to carry the entire offense while Patrick Williams did nothing. Alex Caruso was hurt, so they had they didn't have Javon Carter. They didn't even have Patrick Beverly for half a year. What was it? Ayo Dosunmu was their point guard, and then Nikola Vucevic is just the most frustrating player to watch in the history of basketball too. So I can understand them just saying, we're tired, we're not going to play defense. But it does lead to losing basketball. It does explain why this team routinely loses the games that they shouldn't. And even though he had a 0.3 defensive box plus minus last year, he's been in the negatives really since that San Antonio Spurs season. And really ever since he got drafted, he's been a minus defensive player, mostly due to effort. And so when his shot isn't falling, when that mid-range jumper isn't going, when he's not getting the foul baiting calls that he routinely gets in the regular season, that's when he becomes a negative player for your team. That's when you get outed in the playoff tournament. And that's when you realize that DeMar DeRozan just isn't the guy to carry your team to a championship or even to an Eastern Conference Finals. And that's the spiel on DeMar DeRozan. You've all heard it before. He's going into his age, 34 season, so we know exactly what he is. And if anything, he's going to start regressing. This is as good as DeMar gets, which was a fringe MVP candidate for a couple seasons the last few years, but that is it. Moving on to Mr. Patrick Williams, and because alongside Kobe White, Patrick Williams had a breakout year last year, which isn't a lot for him, but given the first few seasons that he's had in the NBA, the fact that he's playing better was good. It was good enough. The fact that he was even playing decent basketball was good because, man, this guy was taken with the number 4 overall pick. I think it was the Zion draft class. So it was Zion, Ja, RJ, and then Patrick Williams, and P. Will has been horrible. But that 3-point shot has always been money, and that's kind of what's kept him around. Rookie year, 39%. Sophomore year, 51% on only 17 games dealt with injuries. And then last year, 41%. And if he stays above 40% for his career, at the very least, that, given his frame, will keep him around in the NBA. But man, is he a turnover machine. His assist to turnover ratio is 1-to-1. For his career, he's averaged 1.3 assists and 1.3 turnovers. Cannot play make. Not a great rebounder, only 4.3, given the fact that he's a freaky athletic 6'8", 6'9" kid. Defense comes and goes. Offense comes and goes. Sometimes he's a positive player. A lot of times he's a negative player. Doesn't play make at all. And the fact that they have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan playing hero ball, it means a lot of the time Patrick Williams is relegated to the corner and just playing that PJ Tucker, sit in the corner, shoot the ball when I give it to you, and do nothing else role, which isn't great. Oftentimes he's really just a souped up Pat Connaughton, which is a little sad because he was a former point guard and he just does not have the ability to create his own shot. He never can get into a rhythm. And I don't know if it's because the Bulls have the worst development team in the all of the NBA. I don't know if it's the fact that Patrick Williams wasn't really talented, but for whatever reason, he's just a souped up Pat Connaughton who sits in the corner and turns the ball over. So this is going to be a big year for Patrick Williams. He's going to year 4. This is where they extend the qualifying offer. They can extend the Supermax, or they can just say, good riddance, we're going to get rid of you. Lauri Markkanen 2.0, hopefully he goes somewhere else and can learn how to play basketball because he just has not learned how to play it here. And moving on to the last guy who's going to be controversial for this team, Mr. Nikola Vucevic. And first of all, credit to Vooch for having a bounce back season, because 2 years ago was probably some of the ugliest center basketball we have seen from somebody who does not play defense. And we all know that Vooch doesn't play defense, not for any lack of effort, just for the fact that he is the stiffest tips in the world. The man cannot tango. But 3, 4, 5 years ago when he was playing for the Magic, he was the 3rd best center in the NBA. He was a stretch 5, shooting 40% from 3, dropping an efficient 20 and 12 a night. And we were saying Vucevic is great. He should go to a winning team and see if he can win a championship. And then he came to the Bulls and had 1 good season and then has 2 mediocre seasons where you're like, ugh, Vucevic, just another center. Defense, major liability. Offense, oftentimes can't shoot the 3, liability. Get him off the court. Let's put in Andre Drummond. And to be honest, to be completely frank, there was a lot of games where Andre Drummond was a lot better than Nikola Vucevic was. But I got to give a little bit of credit last year, which is why he did get re-signed. He had a bounce back season, 34.9, we'll call it 35% from the 3. His jump hook out of the post came back. He got a little more confident because I think 2 years ago, he just stopped posting up altogether. I don't know if it was because it's inefficient. Billy Donovan said, stop taking the mid-range jumper. And Vooch just got out of his mind and got out of his game. His defense is always going to be a problem, both his overall awareness, his effort. He makes a good first effort. He'll body you up, but that second and third effort, that protecting the rim and grabbing rebounds that you need from your bigs, he just doesn't give, and he's just not going to be able to give. He's been a minus defender since he came into the league. And so Bulls fans are a little torn, and I'm torn a little bit as well, that he's brought back to this Bulls team, and they're going to run it back, even though they were a bottom 5 team in the East last season, and they don't even have their first round picks because they traded so much away from Nikola Vucevic. And I can only imagine what the Bulls fans are thinking, hindsight 2020, that they wish to have some of those picks back. They could have a Franz Wagner. They could have a... Who else have the Magic picked up with his trade? They gave up Wendell Carter Jr., who's arguably a better center than Nikola Vucevic is, given his defensive ability. They gave up 2 first-round picks, one of them Franz Wagner. I think they gave up this year's number 11 overall pick, Jet Howard, so just another quality 3-and-D wing for Nikola Vucevic. That trade, hindsight 2020, really has not worked out for the Chicago Bulls team, but at least the Magic to this point can say, hey, we've won a championship and you haven't. The Bulls were competitive, and at one point, a long time ago, the Chicago Bulls were the best team in the Eastern Conference with Lonzo Ball. But that's going to do it for the starting lineup. Not great, but they do have a pretty solid bench. Looking at the next 5, they do start with the GOAT Caruso, who's everybody's favorite player. He's a fan favorite. He's a walking meme. He tries hard, and he's honestly a really good defender on top of that. Once Lonzo went out with injury and he got thrust into the starting lineup, he kind of got exposed. His decision-making isn't great. It's not terrible, but he's more great in the transition than he is in an actual half-court offense. He doesn't have a horrible assist-to-turnover ratio, about 3-to-1, which is pretty decent, better than a Javon Carter is. Ever since that injury with Grayson Allen, Alex Caruso's three-point shot has really fallen off because he shot 48% for the Lakers, then shot 33%, and then shot 40% for the Lakers, came to Chicago, was knocking it down, and then he broke his wrist, and it feels like his form has never regained that status that he had before. So at the end of the day, he's a good backup point guard, not a good starting point guard. He's got incredible size on him. He's about 6'7", great wingspan. He has killer defensive instincts. He's one of the top perimeter defenders in the league. You stretch out his steals per 36. He's routinely at about 2 ever since he came to the Chicago Bulls and took a jump up in his game. He's been about, what do the stats say, 2.2 steals per 36, which is going to be up there with some of the best players in the NBA with the Drew Holidays. He has a great defensive instincts, gives you effort, tenacious. He just has injuries that he has to deal with now. He's routinely not been healthy, played 41 games in that first year after the Grayson Allen injury, played 67 games last year, and has never played more than, looking at the stats, 64 games for the Lakers. Great backup point guard. If Javon Carter can stay healthy and be the starter for this team, Alex Caruso is going to come in and run this second unit pretty well, because the rest of the second unit are pretty feasible NBA players, starting with Kobe White, who's really improved his game. His bust days are past him. Now he just needs to find consistency impacting the game, especially when his shot is off, because he's a glorified catch and shooter, which is a little disappointing for a former top 10 pick. Ironically, his defense, his handle, and his playmaking are up, and his shooting was down last year, which makes me think that he was being asked to do a little bit too much, and he was uncomfortable. But Kobe White went from being bust to being shooter to being trying to do a little too much and struggle with it. So at the end of the day, Kobe White, drafted as a point guard, is more of that shooting guard, combo guard, can facilitate a couple plays and run the offense if you need him to, but it's more break glass in case of emergency. Why Ayo Dosunmu was asked to be the point guard instead of Kobe White. Kobe's more of a bench scorer. He's going to give you 37% from the three-point line, efficient scoring, efficient shot making, but he's not going to create for the team. And even though you look at his numbers and they're all down, the counting numbers are down, 15 points to 12 points to 9 points last season, it's because his usage rate is down, and his efficiency has actually gone up, which is what you want to see from a guy who was considered a bust by all accounts. I think coming off the bench as that 6th man, 7th man, scoring burst off the bench, not asked to do too much defensively, not asking to be a POA defender because Nikola Vucevic isn't good enough. If he can play and continue to develop his game and fill that role that he's learned to play for this Chicago Bulls team, he's going to continue to have good basketball in front of him. Ayo Dosunmu coming in next, and a lot of Bulls fans were a little upset that they brought him back. I think they said he was overpaid, but I gotta say, I like the deal. I like Ayo's game. He's an underappreciated second-round pick, and he's been playing good for the Bulls since day one. His biggest problem is that the Bulls were trying to fit a square rod into a circle hole. He's a number 2, a combo guard being asked to play number 1, and playmake, and he did a valiant job, all things being equal. He's a decent slasher, really good defender. It's just that his shot will come and go, and it's been that way since they took him out of Illinois. He's never been a remarkable three-point shooter, but he's been good enough to hold his weight. First year, he shot, I think, 39%, and then as you can see, last year, he shot 31%, and shooting is at a premium, especially for the Chicago Bulls team, where Nikola Vucevic's shot will fall off, where DeMar DeRozan doesn't shoot the three, where Zach LaVine will occasionally have 0 for 11 nights and then bounce back with a 7 for 7 night, and then where Alex Caruso has forgotten how to shoot. And then they'd have to fill the shoes of Lonzo Ball, who was a 40% three-point shooter before he went out. But Ayo Dosunmu is by no means remarkable, but for coming into this tumultuous Bulls organization in day one as a round 2 pick, filling up every single role that they've asked him to do, either being a point guard or being a wing player or being a backup or being a starter, he deserves a lot of credit. And he hasn't really progressed. He had that sophomore slump, we'll say, last season, when defenses learn to figure out, they look at the scouting report and they say, don't let him go left or don't let him go right. He's going to need to continue to be a tenacious defender and play more of that wing player position that he's capable of doing. He's kind of a do-it-all, jack-of-all-trades guard for this team, a tick undersized, but if he can be a strong POA defender, he can fill a role that Kobe White doesn't, because Kobe White is a horrible defender and Ayo Dosunmu can be a great defender. It just relies on his effort and making sure that he stays healthy. But I like Ayo Dosunmu, and I like that he brought him back. Moving on to Mr. Torrey Craig. And Torrey Craig was a guy that I was talking about a lot, and then he was actually bad last season. But he's one of those underappreciated guys that every team wants. He's got great size, about 6'8", 6'9", really strong, versatile, can play the 3, can play the 4, can play the small ball 5. Solid shooter from deep. It comes and it goes. Last year, he had a career year, 39%, which is why the Chicago Bulls signed him. But before that, 32%. Before that, 33%. Before that, 32%. Before that, 37%. And 36%. So is he closer to a 40% three-point shooter, or is he closer to his career average of about 33, 34%? I'm thinking the latter, but I do like his defensive effort. I do like him coming off the bench, giving you 10 minutes a night. Similar to Javon Carter, he's another one of those guys where if you ask him to do a little too much, he's going to struggle. But he is a really solid rebounder. You stretch out his per 36 numbers, he gives you 11 and 7.9, but he's a classic guy. You can't put the ball in his hands or he's going to turn the ball over. He really belongs on the Dallas Mavericks when it comes to that. But he'll catch and shoot, he'll spot up, he'll space the floor for you. If he shoots 39% from 3 next season, he's going to look like the steal of the century. He's going to look like one of the best signings because I think they got him on like a 2-year, $5 million deal. Issue with Torrey Craig is don't ever play him more than 10 minutes a night and he won't be disappointed. So hopefully for Torrey, you simplify his role offensively, let him be a strong defender off the bench, and he can be a valuable bench rotation player for this team. Moving on to somebody who's kind of a fringe rotation player, and Andre Drummond, who's still a super young player. He's going to be going into his year 30 season, which is just unreal because 4 years ago, he was an all-star for the Pistons, got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, was earning max dollars, and now his role has been reduced to 12 minutes a night, giving you 6 rebounds and 6 points. But he is who he is, who is a strong, tenacious rebounder to the point where he'll steal rebounds from his teammates just so he makes sure that he gets his. He has a little bit of this playmaking gene similar to Marcus Smart. Well, he'll try to make a pass that he probably shouldn't, and 2 times in a row, he's going to make the pass. It's going to be the ugliest turnover in the world, and it's going to result to fast break points going the other way. Then 2 times in a row, he's going to make this flashy, ridiculous bounce pass between 2 players' legs that goes to an instant alley-oop, dunk, whatever for his teammate. And you go, oh my God, look at the playmaking for Andre Drummond. So he's a little bit of a turnover machine for a guy who should not be having the ball this often, which is why he's got a career 1.9 turnovers per game, given the fact that he is a center and doesn't have any offensive game whatsoever. He can't shoot the ball, can't shoot the free throws. He's always at risk of being a hack of Drummond. Career 47% free throw shooter. He's about 53, I want to say, the last 2 seasons, which is fine. He's bounced around the league, but he's really found a good home here, giving you good effort off the bench, 15 minutes a night, playing defense a little better than Nikola Vucevic can, and really anything on the defensive end for the center position is big for this team. Not that he's a positive defensive player by any stretch, but he's been at least decent effort-wise. Ever since he left Cleveland, he's been about, looking at his defensive box plus minus, he's been 1.0 for the Lakers, 2.5 for the 76ers, negative 0.5 for the Brooklyn Nets, and then 0.5 last season for the Bulls. So he's not a great defender, not a great rim protector, not going to get a bunch of blocks, but he's going to give you effort, and he's a little better, more agile than Nikola Vucevic is, because anybody who's not a traffic cone is more agile than Vooch. So Andre Drummond is going to come off the bench, be probably the best backup center in the NBA for the Chicago Bulls. At the very least, backup center isn't a big deal for this team, which isn't saying a lot. I understand that. Moving on to the next of the next 5. And this is where it starts to get a little bit ugly. Starting with Carlik Jones, who, I'm going to be honest, I loved his game coming out of college. He's a little bit campaignish, plays a decent backup point guard role, isn't a great shooter, isn't a great playmaker, but he's a decent scorer, slasher, and he's really tenacious. He'll give you energy at the very least. His problem is that he's undersized. He's not a great defender, not a great shooter. He's only played 56 minutes in the NBA. So is he going to be more of a G League guy, or is he going to be more of a starter? Time will have to tell. But you look at the rest of the team, there's not a lot of great depth behind him. Former first-round pick Dalen Terry, who still has yet to find his footing. Lonzo Ball, taking a roster spot. Julian Phillips, I think a second-round pick, not going to find his footing. And Terry Taylor is the 5th man, the 15th player off the bench. So the fact that Carlik Jones has a guaranteed roster spot, at least as of today's recording, is a little bit of a problem when you go to the rest of the depth of this team. But moving on to Dalen Terry, who Bulls fans are high on, and I just got to say, pump your brakes, because his shot is always going to be an issue. It jumped from 32 to 36% in college, which is why he turned into a first-round pick, playing alongside, I think, Keon Johnson? No, Dalen Terry played alongside Ben Mathurin. But at the end of the day, his shooting is not consistent enough. He was drafted to be an upside guard stopper, tenacious defender. He's about 6'7", has a good wingspan, decent athletics. He can play defense, but he only played 214 minutes last season and wasn't great. His handle isn't good. His assists and playmaking isn't good. He's a turnover machine. He's not a point guard facilitator. He's not a shooter. So really, he's just a pesky, energetic defender that plays 6'7", so he can be a combo guard for your team. But he can't shoot, he can't pass, can't play make. I don't really know what the upside is on Dalen Terry other than the fact that he's 6'7". So I don't see it where a lot of Bulls fans do think that he's going to be part of their long-term future. Lonzo Ball, not a lot to talk about. He's going to be gone for the season. Rough, brutal, not end to his career, but just another setback in a career that has a ton of setbacks. which is frustrating because he's overcame so much on top of that. He overcame the horrible shooting. He literally changed his shooting motion and became a 40% three-point shooter. Most guys aspire to be that at one point for one season in their career. And Lonzo Ball figured it out through hard work and effort, but the injuries have just set back his career. Moving on to Julian Phillips, who I don't get it all. I kind of wish that they would drop him to be a two-way guy, but first of all, just watching the Summer League games, it was really fun to hear the announcers continuously confuse Justin Lewis for Julian Phillips or Julian Phillips for Justin Lewis. Really fun. Thank you, NBA, for not knowing what the hell you're talking about. But Julian Phillips is a really well-built kid. He looks like one of the Thompson twins, if I'm being honest, given his size and the hairdo and his wingspan. He's just not comfortable touching the ball whatsoever. 23% three-point shooter, 41% field goal shooting out of college is unacceptable. Literally, anytime he passes the ball, he's at risk of committing a turnover. Kind of one of those Andre Roberson types, but he has that perfect prototypical NBA build. He's like 6'8", great wingspan, really nimble, really agile. He just cannot touch the ball at all and is a constant risk of being an offensive liability. Don't know where he's going to fit into this team long future. And then lastly, Mr. Terry Taylor, who I'm honestly surprised the Chicago Bulls picked him up. And I really think they should have filled out a better roster spot than Terry Taylor. But I like Terry Taylor's game because he's a tenacious rebounder. His problem is that he's like 6'3". He's 6'4". He's constantly setting records for being the shortest guy to rebound like 10, 15 rebounds a night. He will give you effort. He's got those Dennis Rodman-like instincts where he's going to watch the ball, know how it's going to bounce off the rim, and be the first guy to get it. If only he was 5 inches taller, he could probably average double-digit rebounds and be a menacing stopper, be a menacing defender, be a menacing rebounder for any NBA team. He can't shoot, and the three-pointer has not come along, and that's going to be a major liability because no matter how much effort he gives you defensively, no matter how much rebounding he does, if he can't space the floor, this Bulls team has no use for him. And he's been the last guy signed to their 15th roster spot, and I don't know if he's going to stick around for the entirety of the season because if that three isn't falling, they're going to have to go in another direction with the Julian Phillips and Carlik Jones as well on the roster. But that is going to do it for the next of the next 5. And then we'll go to the rest of the team. On Uralp Bitim, I don't know who the hell you are. He was out of Turkey. I've seen his highlights. Not very impressive, but there's some potential there. He's a 24-year-old European player. Can shoot the three okay. Can defend okay. Going to play in the G League this season. Maybe he's going to offer something to this team. Come in, give them valuable minutes. Be like an Anthony Lamb was or the Golden State Warriors or something. Justin Lewis. Only saw 5 minutes of his game, but the 5 minutes I saw in the Summer League was horrible. He was repeatedly caught out of position. He was lacking in concentration, dropped a couple of balls. Maybe the nerves got to him, I don't know what, but he didn't have good defensive discipline. He missed the rotations. Literally, when he's on the court, he was out of position leading to open shots. He didn't switch correctly. He wasn't shot ready in the corner. It wasn't a good 5 minutes of Summer League for Justin Lewis. And just for me, the fact that the Chicago Bulls team decided to move ahead with Justin Lewis instead of Javon Freeman Liberty is criminal. I'm not complaining that Javon Freeman Liberty didn't get a contract and be a full-time guaranteed starter for the Chicago Bulls. Not by any stretch. But Javon Freeman Liberty was lights out, unreal. Dropped, I think, 30 points, but routinely dropped at least 20. Was like a 24, 7, and 6 guy in the Summer League for the Bulls. He was the best player on the court. Yes, his defense was horrible. I think he had like a average 119 defensive rating, which is some of the worst you'll ever see. But he was a shot maker. He was a playmaker. Justin Lewis was horrible, and then he got hurt, and he kept his roster spot while Javon Freeman Liberty had to walk and go to the Toronto Raptors. I think that is criminal, and that is part of why I have always frowned upon the Chicago Bulls organization. That is my rant. Moving on to Mr. Adamo Sanogo, who is an offensive rebounding machine. He is a strong dude. He's about 6'9", 300 pounds. He does not move side to side well at all. His free throw stroke is horrendous, but he actually converts that at a pretty high rate, 76% in his last season at UConn, and he pounds the offensive glass. Is he a great defender? No. Is he a three-point shooter? No. Does he set good screens? No. But man, does he go after rebounds tenaciously. And he might be somebody who could take over a Terry Taylor's roster spot in the upcoming future just because he is 6'9", while Terry Taylor is like a 6'3". So Adamo Sanogo, interesting piece for this team. Moving on to their coach and culture ranking, where they are coming in at the bottom at a tier 5. And I just don't know how you can cut it, how you can slice this cake any way other than this team doesn't have a future, doesn't have a vision, doesn't have a blueprint for success. They've been struggling and they keep doing the same things over and over and over. Have I told you the definition of insanity? It is the Chicago Bulls. Lonzo Ball is gone for the season immediately. Already we're like, well, let's look in a different direction. Nikola Vucevic has a mediocre year, gets re-signed. Billy Donovan is a mediocre head coach, gets re-signed. And this team doesn't have draft picks, doesn't have athletic kids, doesn't have a future. And still they're saying, let's run it back one more season. And I know it's tough to say, let's blow this all up, let's go for the rebuild. But when you have a win now team that's routinely picking in the lottery, that's routinely picking top 10, you have to realize that this team doesn't have what it takes to win a championship, let alone make the playoffs. Even the Washington Wizards have finally said, we're going to go in another direction with our team. There is no future. We're going to trade away the pieces for what we can get and look forward. And this team just hasn't. They don't have an identity. Are they defense? Are they offense? Do they want rebounding? Do they want shooting? Do they want to win? Do they want to lose? The only thing that I know what the Chicago Bulls team wants to do is go out and play hero ball with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. The rest is a question mark game to game. And that's why they'll beat the Celtics 2 out of 3. And that's why they'll lose to the Magic 2 out of 3. And it's just frustrating right now. It's a tough time to be a Bulls fan. And that's why they're going to be coming in so low despite these contracts that they have. I mean, you look at it. Zach LaVine is locked into a Supermax deal going into the 2026 season. He's almost going to earn $50 million. DeMar DeRozan going into his age 34 season. How much is he going to be offering you in the long-term future? How much is he going to ask for? Are they going to re-sign him? Because they already re-signed Vooch. Lonzo Ball is just here soaking up money. No offense, I know it's the injuries and I know he's had bad luck, but he's taken $20 and $21 million and giving the team nothing right now. Nikola Vucevic being brought back. Why? I don't know. He's earning $20 million a year. Kobe White is where we start to get a little more intelligent with the signings. I like his deal. Maybe a little expensive for a guy coming off the bench, but he still has some potential. $12 million a year ain't bad. Patrick Williams rookie deal. Alex Caruso backup point guard deal. I can work with that. Ayo Dosunmu, I didn't hate this signing at all. He's been a valuable player for this team. A good piece off the bench. $7 million is more than acceptable. Javon Carter, didn't like this deal at all because he's been on a vet minimum deal for the last 3-4 seasons, and then the Bulls just threw $20 million at him. And I know he's supposed to be their starting point guard, but he's not a starting point guard. The Bucks, it worked perfectly for him because he didn't have to be a point guard. He could let Giannis be the point guard, and he could let Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday be the point guard, and he was just the defense and shooting, and it's just frustrating. Andre Drummond on the final year of his deal, probably going to go somewhere after this season and get a solid, maybe $10 million backup center contract. Dalen Terry rookie, Julian Phillips rookie, Torrey Craig, good signing. I'm happy with that. Terry Taylor is getting minimum money, and so is Carlick Jones. I don't like the fact that they're 2-year deals, but they're on the roster for at least the 2024 season. So I don't love what this team is doing, which is why they're going to be coming back despite the fact that they have a couple of all-stars on their team. Why they're going to be coming in with that 78.38 rating despite having a projected win total of under 500. And the only thing that could put this team over the top, the only thing that we're looking forward to in Chicago basketball future is if Lonzo Ball comes back and they return to that glory that we saw 2-3 years ago. I don't know how long it was. So that's why the Bulls are going to be coming in at 24. Not a great outlook for this team, but not every team is looking long-term future. Not every team is getting number 1 overall picks. You look at the rest of these guys, the Wizards are looking for a number 1 overall pick. The Hornets got a number 2 overall pick and LaMelo Ball. The Pistons have a number 1 overall pick and a couple of top 5 picks. The Rockets have a couple of top 5 picks. The Magic have a Paulo Banchero. The Spurs have a Victor Wembanyama, and the Bulls have DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, and that's why it's a little sad. So let me know what your thoughts are on this, what you agree with, and what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one.